In this episode, we're going to connect everything you've learned so far to the place where risk becomes real for leadership, the organization's overall risk management program. A lot of beginners assume AI risk is a special topic that sits off to the side, handled by a small group of technical experts. But that approach usually fails because AI affects the same business outcomes every other risk affects. When AI influences money, safety, trust, and legal exposure, it belongs in the same decision and reporting channels that already exist for risk. The best way to do that is to integrate AI risk into enterprise risk management, ERM, so the organization uses shared language, shared processes, and shared metrics. Integration reduces confusion, reduces duplicated work, and helps leaders compare AI risk to other risks instead of treating it as a mysterious exception. It also helps prevent a very common problem where AI projects move quickly because they are labeled innovation while other risk-managed initiatives move carefully, creating an uneven and dangerous governance landscape. By the end, you should be able to explain what it means to integrate AI risk into ERM and why this integration improves both speed and safety. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. The first idea to get comfortable with is that ERM is not a single document or a single team, but a way an organization makes risk decisions consistently across many topics. In most organizations, ERM includes common categories of risk, common methods for assessment, common reporting expectations, and a shared set of leadership conversations about what risks are acceptable. It often involves a risk register, a cadence of reporting, and a governance structure that connects daily operations to executive oversight. When AI risk is not integrated into ERM, it often develops its own vocabulary, its own ad hoc scoring methods, and its own reporting channels, which can isolate it from leadership attention. That isolation creates two problems at once. Leaders cannot compare AI risk to other risks, and AI risk owners cannot access the organization's established processes for escalation and resource support. Integration means AI risk is described in the same language and handled through the same channels as other risks, while still respecting what is unique about AI. This is why integration is not a bureaucratic preference, but a practical requirement for consistent governance. Shared language is the first pillar because words drive decisions, especially when people from different backgrounds need to agree quickly. If AI teams talk about drift, hallucination, and model confidence while risk teams talk about likelihood, impact, controls, and residual risk, the conversation can become confusing and unproductive. Integration does not mean forcing technical teams to stop using technical terms. It means ensuring those terms can be translated into the risk language leaders use to allocate attention and budgets. For example, drift can be described as a reliability degradation risk that increases the likelihood of incorrect outcomes over time. Bias can be described as a fairness and compliance risk that increases the impact of harm on specific groups and increases legal exposure. Misuse can be described as a control weakness and policy violation risk, often tied to data handling and accountability. When AI risks are expressed using the same risk language as other business risks, executives can compare them, prioritize them, and assign ownership in a way that feels normal. That normalcy is important because it reduces fear and reduces the temptation to treat AI as either magic or menace. Shared processes are the second pillar, and they matter because process is how organizations avoid reinventing decisions every time a new AI use case appears. If ERM already has a risk intake process, an assessment method, and a review cadence, AI risk should plug into those rather than creating a parallel universe. That means AI use cases should enter the same intake channel, be assessed using the same basic structure, and be recorded in the same risk register when appropriate. It also means AI risk should follow the same escalation logic, so when risk exceeds tolerance, leadership is notified through familiar routes. This is especially valuable for beginners to understand because it shows that AI risk work is not about creating entirely new systems, but about extending existing ones to handle a new category of risk. Integration also improves consistency, because the same standards of evidence and documentation that apply to other risks can be applied to AI. When teams follow shared processes, it becomes easier to spot gaps, because deviations from process become visible. That visibility is a control in itself. A practical way to think about shared processes is to focus on the life cycle of a risk, from identification to assessment to treatment to monitoring to reporting. AI risk should not have a different life cycle simply because it involves models, because the organization still needs to identify what could go wrong, assess how bad it could be, decide what to do about it, and monitor whether controls are working. What changes is the content of each step, not the step itself. Identification may require inventorying AI systems and shadow use, because AI can be hidden in vendor features and daily workflows. Assessment may require considering error patterns, fairness concerns, and drift potential, because AI can behave differently over time. Treatment may involve boundaries, human review, data restrictions, or monitoring improvements, because those are common AI controls. Monitoring may require new signals, because performance and fairness can shift as the environment changes. Reporting may require explaining AI risk in ways leaders understand, which is where shared language becomes essential. Using the same lifecycle steps makes AI risk predictable and governable rather than improvisational. Shared metrics are the third pillar, and metrics matter because they turn risk discussions into manageable decisions rather than emotional debates. In ERM, metrics help leaders see whether risk is increasing or decreasing, whether controls are effective, and where resources should be applied. For AI, metrics should not be limited to model accuracy, because accuracy alone does not capture harm, fairness, or defensibility. Instead, integration means selecting metrics that align with how the organization already evaluates risk, such as measures of impact, frequency of incidents, control effectiveness, and trend indicators. For example, leaders may care about the number of high-impact AI use cases, the number of unresolved AI risk issues, and the trend in AI-related incidents. They may care about how many systems have complete documentation, how many have active monitoring, and how quickly issues are detected and corrected. Shared metrics also support comparisons, because an executive can look at AI risk alongside other risks and decide where the organization is overexposed. The key is not perfect measurement, but consistent measurement that supports defensible decision-making. A common beginner misunderstanding is thinking that integrating AI risk into ERM means reducing AI-specific nuance until it becomes generic. Integration should not flatten what is unique about AI. It should translate it. AI risks often involve uncertainty, scale, and shifting behavior over time. So the ERM process must be able to handle those features without pretending they do not exist. That means assessment discussions should explicitly consider whether the AI is used in high-impact decisions, whether humans rely on outputs appropriately, and whether monitoring can detect drift and bias before harm becomes severe. It also means the risk register should capture AI-specific control dependencies, like the need for consistent documentation, clear ownership, and periodic reassessment. If integration becomes a box check where AI risks are labeled in generic terms without capturing their dynamics, the organization loses the main benefit of integration, which is better control. The goal is to make AI risk understandable and comparable, not to make it invisible. When you keep that balance, integration strengthens risk management instead of diluting it. Another important integration concept is aligning AI risk ownership with existing ERM ownership structures. In ERM, risks usually have owners who are accountable for managing the risk, implementing controls, and reporting status. AI risks should follow the same principle, meaning each material AI risk should have an accountable owner and clear supporting roles. This connects back to earlier lessons on decision rights, because ownership is meaningless without authority to act. Integration helps here because existing ERM governance often already has rules about who can accept risk, who can approve exceptions, and how long exceptions can last. AI risk should use those same rules, especially for high-impact uses where risk acceptance must be deliberate and documented. This prevents the pattern where AI teams become de facto risk owners without being empowered, or where business teams push for adoption without owning outcomes. When AI risk ownership sits within ERM, it becomes easier to enforce consistency because ownership expectations are already culturally established. For beginners, this is an important point. You do not have to invent accountability from scratch if you leverage the organization's existing risk governance structure. Integration also helps with prioritization, which is one of the most practical benefits for leadership. Organizations always have more risks than time, and ERM exists partly to help leaders decide what to address first. If AI risk is isolated, it can either be over-prioritized because it is new and scary or under-prioritized because it is unfamiliar and hard to compare. Shared language and shared metrics solve this by allowing leaders to see where AI risk sits relative to other risks, like operational risk, compliance risk, cybersecurity risk, and reputational risk. That comparison supports rational allocation of resources, such as deciding whether to invest more in monitoring, documentation tooling, training, or vendor oversight. It also supports strategic alignment, because leaders can decide which AI initiatives fit within the organization's risk appetite and which ones should be delayed until capabilities improve. Prioritization becomes more defensible because it is based on consistent criteria rather than on hype or fear. For beginners, this shows that integration is not theoretical. It directly shapes what gets funded and what gets governed. A subtle but powerful integration benefit is reducing duplicated work and reducing conflicting guidance across teams. When AI risk is managed separately, it is common to see different teams create separate assessment templates, separate reporting dashboards, and separate definitions of impact. That duplication wastes time, but it also creates confusion when teams receive inconsistent instructions. Integration into ERM encourages reuse of existing assessment methods, reuse of the risk register, and reuse of established reporting cadence, which simplifies the experience for business teams proposing AI use cases. It also makes training easier because employees learn one general risk language and one set of processes that apply to many risks, including AI. This increases compliance because people are more likely to follow a process they already know and trust. Integration can also reduce friction between risk teams and AI teams because they are working within a shared framework rather than negotiating from different worldviews. For beginners, it helps to recognize that governance effectiveness is partly about human behavior, and humans follow processes more reliably when those processes are consistent and familiar. Another key integration point is ensuring AI risk is visible in the same reporting channels leaders already use for oversight. If ERM reporting includes regular updates on top risks, emerging risks, and control effectiveness, AI risk should appear there when it is material. That visibility is important because AI risk can evolve quickly as tools change, vendors update features, and business teams expand use cases. Reporting should include not just a list of AI projects, but a risk view that shows where the organization is exposed and what is being done about it. For example, leadership might need visibility into how many high-impact AI systems are in use, how many have completed required documentation, and whether monitoring has detected any concerning trends. Reporting should also include lessons learned from incidents, because those lessons improve governance and prevent recurrence. Integration ensures AI risk is not reported as a separate novelty topic, but as part of the organization's overall risk posture. That posture view is what executives and boards are typically responsible for, and it is what they can defend if questioned. It is also useful to understand how integration supports better decision-making during change, because AI environments change constantly. ERM often includes change management practices, where significant changes to systems or processes trigger risk review. AI should be included in that change awareness, meaning updates to models, changes to data sources, and expansion to new populations should trigger reassessment under the same principles as other material changes. Integration also helps identify emerging risks, such as new regulatory expectations or new patterns of misuse, because ERM programs often have mechanisms for scanning and reporting emerging risk trends. When AI risk is part of that conversation, the organization is less likely to be surprised by external changes and more likely to adapt proactively. Beginners sometimes assume risk programs only react to incidents, but a strong ERM approach includes anticipation, not just response. AI is an area where anticipation matters because the cost of learning after harm can be severe. Integrating AI into those existing anticipation mechanisms increases resilience and reduces the chance of reactive crisis management. For exam-style thinking, integration often shows up as the difference between answers that create isolated AI governance and answers that leverage enterprise-level consistency. When you see a scenario where AI risk is being handled inconsistently across departments, integration into ERM is usually a strong corrective step because it imposes shared language, shared processes, and shared metrics. When you see a scenario where leadership cannot understand AI risk or cannot compare it to other risks, using ERM structures is often the most defensible approach. When you see a scenario where an organization has AI policies but cannot enforce them consistently, integration with ERM can strengthen accountability and reporting because ERM often has established enforcement and escalation mechanisms. The exam generally rewards choices that reduce fragmentation and improve defensibility, rather than choices that add yet another parallel governance layer. If AI risk is treated as a separate world, it will struggle to receive sustained leadership attention. Integration places AI risk into the same governance bloodstream as other risks, which is how it stays managed over time. To bring everything together, imagine an organization that has inventoried AI systems, classified impact, set risk appetite boundaries, and defined documentation expectations, but still struggles because teams treat AI risk as a special project instead of an enterprise risk. Integration into ERM would connect those pieces into the enterprise risk register, align ownership to established structures, and define a reporting cadence that includes AI risk alongside other top risks. It would translate AI-specific issues like drift and bias into likelihood and impact language leaders use, and it would use shared metrics to track control effectiveness over time. It would also ensure that risk treatment decisions, such as accepting risk with conditions or requiring additional controls, follow the same approval logic used for other risks. This creates a coherent system where AI risk management is not reinvented for each new use case. Instead, AI becomes another governed domain within the broader risk program, with special considerations handled through standards rather than separate governance universes. For beginners, this example shows that integration is the glue that turns many good practices into an operational program. To close, integrating AI risk into ERM means making AI risk understandable, comparable, and governable using the same enterprise mechanisms the organization already relies on for serious risk decisions. Shared language ensures AI-specific concepts like drift, bias, and misuse can be translated into risk terms leaders can act on, reducing confusion and improving prioritization. Shared processes ensure AI use cases follow consistent intake, assessment, treatment, monitoring, and escalation patterns, reducing duplicated work and reducing governance gaps. Shared metrics ensure leaders can track AI risk posture and control effectiveness over time and compare AI risk to other enterprise risks in a defensible way. Integration does not erase what is unique about AI. It ensures those unique dynamics are captured and managed within a consistent enterprise framework. When organizations integrate well, they move faster with less chaos because risk conversations become predictable and evidence-driven. This integration mindset will support the next topics that deepen governance and control thinking, because once AI risk is inside ERM, the organization can treat it with the seriousness and discipline it deserves.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.